Welcome back to Dark Horror Stories. In today's episode, I'm sharing 5 deeply unsettling stories from the highways and backroads of New Mexico. These are tales of people who found themselves stranded, lost, or simply passing through and encountered something that defied explanation. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Story 1. The stretch of Highway 60 between Magdalena and Datil is one of those roads that feels like it goes on forever. I mean, you can drive for 40 minutes and see maybe 3 other vehicles if you're lucky. It's all scrubland and distant mesas, the kind of landscape that makes you feel small. I'd driven it dozens of times for work. I was doing contract surveying for a mining company back then, measuring elevations and soil density in the middle of nowhere. The job paid well enough that I didn't mind the isolation. Actually, I think I preferred it. My girlfriend at the time said I was better at being alone than being with people, and she wasn't entirely wrong. It was late September when my truck broke down out there. I just finished a 3-day survey near Pie Town and was heading back to Socorro. The sun was getting low, turning everything that dusty orange color, and I was thinking about whether I wanted Chinese food or pizza when I got home. Stupid, normal thoughts. Then the engine started making this grinding noise, like metal chewing through metal, and before I could even pull over properly, the whole thing just died. Coasted to a stop on the shoulder, hazards blinking uselessly. I tried the ignition a few times, nothing, not even a click. I popped the hood and looked at the engine like I had any idea what I was doing. I didn't. Everything looked normal to me, which meant exactly nothing. My phone had 1 bar of service, and when I tried calling AAA, the call dropped immediately. Tried 3 more times, same thing. I sent a text to my girlfriend explaining the situation, watched the little sending circle spin for a minute, then gave up. The sun was sinking faster than I wanted it to. I had maybe 45 minutes of daylight left. I grabbed my water bottle and jacket from the cab and started walking east, back toward Magdalena. Figured I'd passed a ranch entrance maybe 5 miles back. Someone there might have a phone that actually worked, or at least let me wait until morning when I could flag down help. The walking wasn't bad at first, cooling down nicely, and the sky was doing that thing where it turns about 6 different shades of purple and pink all at once. I kept my eyes on the road, watching for headlights that never came. After about 20 minutes, I started noticing how quiet everything was. No birds, no insects, just the sound of my boots on gravel and my own breathing. The silence felt thick, if that makes sense, like it was pressing against my eardrums. That's when I saw the car. It was sitting maybe 50 yards off the highway, down in a shallow ravine I hadn't noticed from the road. An old sedan, pale blue or maybe gray, hard to tell in the fading light. The hood was up, and I could see someone standing beside it, looking down at the engine. A woman, I thought, based on the build. She was wearing a long coat, despite the weather still being warm. I stopped walking. Something about the scene felt wrong, but I couldn't place what. Maybe it was how perfectly still she was standing, or how I hadn't seen the car when I'd driven past earlier, even though I should have. The ravine wasn't that deep. "Hey," I called out, "you need help?" She didn't turn around, didn't move at all, just kept standing there staring down at the engine. I told myself she probably just didn't hear me. Wind carrying my voice the wrong direction or something. I climbed down the embankment, loose rocks sliding under my boots, and walked toward the car. As I got closer, I noticed the vehicle was in bad shape. Rust eating through the wheel wells, 1 tire completely flat, windows filmed with dust so thick you couldn't see inside. This thing hadn't been driven in months, maybe years. "Excuse me," I said louder this time. I was maybe 10 feet away. She turned her head toward me, not her whole body, just her head. It swiveled smoothly, too smoothly, until she was looking directly at me. The light was almost gone, but I could make out her face. Pale skin, dark eyes, and her mouth was open, not like she was about to speak, but just hanging open, slack, like her jaw had come unhinged. Every muscle in my body locked up. She took a step toward me, and that's when I realized her feet weren't quite touching the ground. Not floating exactly, but her boots were skimming the dirt, leaving no prints. Moving forward without walking, I don't remember making the decision to run. One second I was standing there frozen, and the next I was scrambling back up the embankment, rocks and sand sliding away under my hands and knees. I could hear her behind me, or something behind me, making this wet, rattling sound that might have been breathing, might have been something else. I hit the highway and ran, full sprint, lungs burning, legs pumping harder than they had since high school track. I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. The sound followed me for maybe 30 seconds, that awful rattling wheeze, and then it just stopped. Cut off completely mid-breath. I kept running anyway. Ran until I saw headlights coming toward me from the east, then stood in the middle of the highway waving my arms like a madman. The driver, a rancher named Victor Salazar, almost didn't stop. He told me later I looked like I'd seen a ghost, which I guess wasn't far off. He drove me back to my truck, waited while I tried the ignition one more time, started right up like nothing had ever been wrong. I didn't tell him what I'd seen. Didn't tell anyone except my girlfriend, who suggested maybe I'd been dehydrated. Maybe I was. But 2 days later, I was organizing my surveying gear and found something in the bed of my truck that made my mouth go dry. A small rock, smooth and oval-shaped, with a symbol scratched into it. A circle with a line through it and something that looked like an eye. I'd never seen it before. Don't know how it got there. I quit the surveying job 3 weeks later, told them I was moving back to Colorado for family reasons, which was a lie. Truth was, I couldn't drive that stretch of highway anymore without my hands shaking on the wheel. Still can't. I take the long way through Quemado now, even though it adds 90 minutes to the drive. Sometimes I wonder if that woman is still out there, standing next to that rusted car, waiting for someone else to stop and offer help. I hope whoever it is has the good sense to keep driving. Story 2. My brother Derek and I inherited our uncle's place outside Vaughan after he passed. Neither of us had seen Uncle Raymond in probably 15 years. He'd had some kind of falling out with our dad back when we were kids, and the family just stopped talking about him. So when the lawyer called to say he'd left us the property, it felt surreal, like getting mail addressed to someone you used to be. The house was small, just a single-story adobe sitting on about 40 acres of nothing. Dirt and scrub brush and those gnarled juniper trees that look like they're trying to escape the ground. We drove out there on a Saturday in early March to assess what we were dealing with. Derek thought we could fix it up and sell it. I thought we should just bulldoze the whole thing and sell the land, but I didn't say that. He just lost his job and needed the money more than I did. We got there around noon. The house was in worse shape than the photos suggested, roof sagging in places, windows covered in dust so thick they looked painted gray. The front door was unlocked, which should have bothered me more than it did. Inside smelled like old paper and something vaguely chemical. Mouse droppings everywhere. Derek immediately started taking pictures on his phone, muttering about structural integrity and foundation issues. I wandered through the rooms, opening cabinets and checking drawers, not really sure what I was looking for. In the bedroom, I found a journal on the nightstand. Dark leather cover, pages yellowed and brittle. I flipped it open to a random entry dated August 1997. Uncle Raymond's handwriting was small and precise, almost mechanical. The entry was about the weather, temperature, humidity, wind direction, nothing interesting. I flipped forward, more weather observations. Then, about halfway through the journal, the entries changed. It was outside the fence again last night. Same spot, same posture. I tried the spotlight, but it didn't move, didn't even blink. I don't think it has eyes. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, kept reading. 3 nights now, always between 2 and 3 a.m., always facing the house. I can see it from the bedroom window if I keep the lights off. Too tall to be a person, arms too long. When it turns its head, the movement is wrong, joints bending in directions they shouldn't. Derek called from the other room, asking if I'd found anything worth keeping. I closed the journal and shoved it in my jacket pocket, told him no, just junk. We spent another hour poking around, making lists of repairs that would need addressing. The sun was starting to dip lower, shadows stretching across the desert, when Derek suggested we head back to Albuquerque before it got dark. I agreed immediately, maybe too quickly, because he gave me this look like he knew something was wrong. But he didn't push it. We were loading tools back into his truck when I saw it. Just past the fence line, maybe 100 yards out, there was something standing in the brush. Tall and narrow, dark against the darkening sky, completely motionless. "Derek," I said quietly, "look." He turned, squinted. "What am I looking at?" "That, out there. Is that a person?" He stared for a long moment. "Could be someone from one of the neighboring properties, checking us out." "There are no neighboring properties for miles." He didn't have an answer for that. We both stood there watching it. The thing, because I was already thinking of it as a thing, not a person, didn't move, didn't shift weight or turn its head or do any of the small unconscious movements people make when they're standing still, just perfect, absolute stillness. "Should we go talk to them?" Derek asked, but his voice said he didn't want to. "No," I said, "let's just go." We got in the truck. Derek started the engine and we pulled away, dust kicking up behind us. I watched through the side mirror as the figure grew smaller. Right before we turned onto the main road, it raised one arm, long and thin and wrong, and pointed directly at us. I didn't sleep that night, kept thinking about the journal, about Uncle Raymond writing those entries year after year. When had he stopped? Had he stopped? Or had something stopped him? We went back 2 weeks later to meet with a contractor. Derek wanted me to stay in Albuquerque, said he could handle it alone, but I felt like I needed to see the place one more time. Daylight, clear skies, rational assessment. That's what I told myself. The house looked the same, maybe worse. We walked the property line with the contractor, discussing drainage and road access and whether the well still functioned, everything normal and mundane. The contractor left around 4 p.m., said he'd email us an estimate by Wednesday. Derek and I stayed to lock up. I went back inside to close the bedroom window I'd opened earlier, and that's when I saw it again. Same spot, same impossible stillness, but closer this time, maybe 50 yards from the fence, and in the better light I could see details I wished I couldn't. The way its body was too narrow, like something stretched, the way its head sat at a slight angle, not quite aligned with its spine, the way its arms hung below its knees, fingers brushing the dirt. "Derek," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's back." He came into the room, looked where I was pointing, went pale. "Jesus Christ, what is that?" "I don't know." "Should we call someone? Sheriff or…" "And tell them what?" "There's something standing in the desert. They'll think we're insane." We watched it for maybe 5 minutes. Neither of us wanted to leave the house while it was there, and neither of us wanted to stay after dark. Finally, Derek said we should just make a run for the truck. Get in, lock the doors, and drive. If it tried to stop us, he'd run it over. The plan sounded stupid and desperate, which is exactly what we were. We left through the front door, moving fast but not quite running. Keys already in Derek's hand, 20 feet to the truck, 15, 10, that's when we heard it, a voice high and warbling coming from the direction of the thing. It was calling a name, not our names. Raymond, Uncle Raymond's name, over and over in this sing-song tone that made my skin crawl. We got in the truck. Derek fumbled with the keys, dropped them, grabbed them again. The engine turned over and he reversed hard, nearly hitting the fence post. We tore down the dirt road, rocks pinging against the undercarriage, and I watched through the rear window as the thing grew smaller. It never moved, never stopped calling that name. We listed the property with a real estate agent the next week. Didn't tell her anything except we needed to sell fast. Took a lower offer than we should have, but neither of us cared. I still have the journal. Sometimes I think about reading the rest of it, but I never do. I don't want to know what else Uncle Raymond saw out there. Don't want to know what finally made him stop writing. The house sold to a couple from Texas. Young, enthusiastic, planning to fix it up as a weekend retreat. I wanted to warn them. Almost called the agent to tell her to tell them not to buy it. But what would I even say? That something lives out there in the brush. That it knows your name before you ever set foot on the land. Derek and I don't talk about it, haven't talked about it once since that day. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I'll look out my apartment window at the street below and I'll think I see something standing on the corner. Too tall, too still, too wrong. And I'll close the curtains and turn on every light in the place and wait for morning. Story 3. I was driving from Las Cruces to Alamogordo for a wedding when I saw the girl on the side of Route 70. This was late April, maybe 8 p.m., still had some light left, but the sun was mostly gone behind the mountains. I'd been on the road about 45 minutes, listening to a podcast about unsolved mysteries, ironically enough. She was standing on the shoulder near milepost 127, right where the road starts climbing into the San Andres Mountains. Young, maybe 16 or 17, wearing a white dress that looked too formal for hitchhiking. No bag, no phone visible, just standing there with her thumb out. My first instinct was to keep driving. You don't pick up hitchhikers, especially not alone, especially not as a woman traveling solo. But something made me slow down, maybe the fact that there was absolutely nothing out here. No gas stations, no houses, no other cars. Where had she even come from? I pulled over about 20 feet past her and watched in my rearview mirror as she walked toward the car. Normal walking, normal pace. She moved like a regular teenage girl, kind of slouchy and awkward. That made me feel better. She got to the passenger window and leaned down, and I got a better look at her face. Pretty, with dark hair and darker eyes, but there was something off about her expression. Too blank, like someone had told her to smile for a photo, but forgot to tell her when to stop. I rolled down the window halfway. "You okay? You need help?" "I need a ride," she said. Her voice was flat, no urgency or gratitude or any emotion at all. "To Alamogordo." "That's where I'm going," I said. Should have felt like a convenient coincidence. Instead, felt like the opposite. "Where are your parents?" "Gone," she said, same flat tone. I hesitated. Everything in me was screaming not to open that door. But I thought about how I'd feel if it was me out here, stranded and alone and desperate. How I'd hope someone would stop. So I unlocked the passenger door and she got in, moving with that same slouchy awkwardness that felt almost rehearsed. "What's your name?" I asked, pulling back onto the highway. "Emma," she said after a pause just long enough to be weird. "I'm Nicole. So what happened? Car breakdown?" "Yes." "Where?" "Back there." She gestured vaguely behind us. I glanced in the mirror but saw nothing. "We should call someone. Do you have a phone?" "No." "Parents I can call?" "No." The conversation was like pulling teeth. I tried a few more questions. Where in Alamogordo was she going? Did she need me to drop her somewhere specific? But got one-word answers or silence. Eventually I gave up and turned the podcast back on. Emma sat perfectly still in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. Didn't fidget, didn't look out the window, didn't do anything. Just stared. After about 10 minutes I realized she wasn't blinking at all. I watched her peripherally while trying to keep my eyes on the road, counting seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, not a single blink. My mouth went dry. I turned the podcast down. "Emma, you doing okay?" "Yes," she said, still not looking at me. You want me to turn up the heat? You look cold." "I'm not cold." I wasn't imagining it anymore. Something was very wrong. Her skin was too pale, almost waxy in the dashboard lights, and now that I was paying attention, I realized I couldn't hear her breathing. The car was quiet enough that I should hear it, my own breathing, the engine, the tires on asphalt, but no sound from the passenger seat. "Actually," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to stop for gas. There's a station coming up in a few miles." This was a lie. I had 3/4 of a tank, and there were no stations for at least 30 miles. But I needed to get her out of my car. "No," Emma said. "Don't stop." "I have to. I'm almost empty." "No," she repeated, and this time her head turned toward me. That same smooth, bearing-mounted movement I'd seen before. "Don't stop. Don't slow down. Keep driving." Her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, the entire eye, sclera and all, solid black and reflecting the dashboard lights like polished stone. And her mouth was starting to open, wider than it should be able to, jaw extending in a way that made my stomach lurch. I didn't think, just reacted. Slammed on the brakes and yanked the wheel right, sending the car skidding onto the shoulder in a spray of gravel. Emma, or whatever she was, lurched forward against the seatbelt, and I used that split second to reach across and shove the passenger door open. Then I released her seatbelt and pushed her hard out of the car. She tumbled onto the ground, and I hit the gas before she could get up, my tires spinning briefly on the loose rock before catching pavement. I accelerated hard, checking the mirror to see if she was chasing me. She was. She was just standing there on the shoulder where she'd fallen, standing in that same position I'd first seen her in, thumb out, white dress gleaming in the darkness. I drove the rest of the way to Alamogordo at 90 miles per hour, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. Missed the wedding ceremony because I sat in a gas station parking lot for 2 hours trying to calm down enough to drive. When I finally did make it to the reception, my cousin Melissa took one look at me and asked what was wrong. I told her I'd had car trouble, another lie. I drove back to Las Cruces the next morning, broad daylight, and took Highway 54 instead, even though it added an hour to the trip. Haven't been on Route 70 since. Won't ever go back. The thing that bothers me most, that keeps me up at night when I let myself think about it, is wondering how many other people picked her up. How many people saw a girl in a white dress and stopped to help, and whether any of them made it to where they were going. 2 weeks after it happened, I found a long black hair on my passenger seat headrest. I don't have black hair. I vacuumed my car 3 times that day and deep cleaned every surface with disinfectant, but I swear I can still smell something in there sometimes. Something like standing water and rust. I'm thinking about selling the car. Getting something new, something she never touched. But I don't think that'll help. I don't think distance or time or anything else will make me forget the way she said, "Don't stop." Like she was giving me an order. Like she already knew I was supposed to do something, and stopping wasn't part of the plan. I still don't know what would have happened if I'd kept driving. Story 4. The La Bajada Hills Scenic Overlook is one of those places people stop without really thinking about why. It's just there on the side of Highway 599 between Santa Fe and Cachiti, a little pullout with a view of the valley that's pretty enough but not spectacular. I'd passed it 100 times working as a courier for a medical lab, delivering samples between facilities. Usually wouldn't even glance at it. But that day, it was early February, I think, or maybe late January, I needed to stop. Needed to stretch my legs and clear my head because I'd been arguing with my wife over the phone and my jaw hurt from clenching it. So I pulled into the overlook around 3 in the afternoon. Only vehicle, there was an old RV parked at the far end, one of those big 70s-era beasts with faded paint and rust spots. Didn't see anyone around it. I got out, did some stretches, walked to the edge where the overlook faces the valley. The wind was bitter cold, that dry New Mexico wind that strips the moisture right out of your skin. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, just breathing, trying to let go of the anger. That's when I heard the knocking. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, wood on wood, coming from the RV. I turned and looked at it. Windows too dirty to see through, door closed, no movement. The knocking came again. Same pattern, knock, 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 measured, evenly spaced. Then silence. Normal thing would be to ignore it. Probably just someone inside doing whatever people do in RVs, but something about the sound bothered me. It was too regular, too intentional, like a signal. I walked toward it, not sure what I was planning to say. As I got closer, I noticed the RV's tires were flat, all of them. The vehicle was resting on its rims, clearly hadn't moved in months, maybe years, and the license plate was so faded I couldn't make out the numbers. "Hello," I called out. "Do you need help in there?" The knocking stopped. Complete silence, just the wind whistling around the RV's corners. I should have left then. Every rational part of my brain was telling me to get back in my car and drive away. But I was maybe 20 feet from the door and I could see it wasn't quite closed all the way. A gap of about an inch, showing darkness inside. "Anyone there?" I tried again. The door swung open slowly, creaking on old hinges. I couldn't see anything inside, just black. No interior lights, no shapes, nothing. But I could smell something. Copper and earth and something else I couldn't identify. Something organic and wrong. Then I heard the breathing, deep rattling breaths coming from inside the darkness. And I could hear that whatever was breathing was big. The sound filled the whole interior space. I backed away. Slowly at first, not wanting to trigger a chase response, then faster as the breathing got louder. Something moved in the doorway, a shape blocking what little light made it through the filthy windows. Too large to be human. Too broad across the shoulders, too low to the ground, like something moving on all fours but the size of a grown man. I ran, full panic, keys out, jamming them into the driver's door lock because my hands were shaking too badly to hit the unlock button. I could hear it behind me, not footsteps, but a dragging, scraping sound, like something heavy being pulled across pavement. I got the door open, threw myself inside, locked it, started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw it fully for the first time. It had come out of the RV and was standing, crouching in the parking area. Pale gray skin stretched over a skeletal frame, ribs showing, arms hanging down to the ground. But the worst part was the head. Too small for the body, human-shaped but wrong, tilted at an angle like the neck was broken. And it was watching me with eyes that caught the afternoon sun and reflected it back red. I reversed out of that overlook so fast I nearly went off the edge into the valley, spun the wheel, straightened out and floored it back toward Santa Fe. Didn't look back again until I was 5 miles down the highway with 3 other cars visible around me. I called my supervisor and told her I was sick, needed to go home. She was annoyed. I was supposed to make 2 more deliveries that day, but I didn't care. Drove straight to my apartment and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just shaking. That night I tried to tell my wife what happened. She listened, which was more than I expected given we'd been fighting earlier. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked if I'd been drinking. I hadn't. Asked if I'd been taking anything. I hadn't. She suggested maybe I'd been more stressed than I realized. Maybe my mind had filled in details that weren't there. Turned an abandoned RV and some animal noises into something else. Maybe she was right. I wanted to believe she was right. But 3 days later, I worked up the courage to drive past that overlook again. Daylight, other cars on the road, totally safe. The RV was gone, just empty pavement where it had been parked. No tire marks, no oil stains, no evidence it had ever been there. I asked the Santa Fe facility if they'd heard anything about an abandoned RV being towed from La Bajada. They hadn't. Checked with the state highway department. Nothing. I even drove to the overlook and walked around looking for tire tracks in the dirt or any sign of where it might have gone. Nothing. But I did find something else. Near where the RV had been parked, there was a dark stain on the concrete, roughly circular, about 3 feet across, the kind of stain you get from fluid sitting in one spot for a long time. I crouched down to look at it and saw something I wished I hadn't. Scratches. Long, deep scratches gouged into the pavement, radiating out from the stain like something had been trying to dig through solid concrete. I don't work for the medical lab anymore. Quit a month after it happened, told them I was moving to Colorado for a better position. Another lie. Truth is, I couldn't drive those highways anymore. Couldn't pass an overlook or rest stop without my chest tightening, without checking my mirrors obsessively for shapes that shouldn't be there. My wife and I are separated now. Not because of what happened, at least not directly, but because I couldn't explain why I changed. Why I started keeping every light in the apartment on at night. Why I can't sleep unless I can see every corner of the room. Why I sometimes wake up at 3 a.m. convinced I can hear knocking. 3 measured knocks, wood on wood. Slow and deliberate and patient, like something is still waiting for me to answer. Story 5. The thing about getting lost on New Mexico backroads is that it happens gradually. You don't realize you're lost until you've been lost for a while. That's what happened to me and my friend Paige last summer. We were driving from Albuquerque to Taos for a long weekend, taking the scenic route because we had time and the weather was perfect. Paige had just finished her nursing degree, and this was supposed to be a celebration trip before she started her new job at Presbyterian. We were somewhere near Espanola when my GPS lost signal. Not unusual, plenty of dead zones in northern New Mexico. I figured it would come back once we got closer to Taos, but after about 30 minutes I started recognizing landmarks we'd already passed. That twisted juniper tree leaning over the road. The rusted water tank with the bullet holes. We were going in circles. "Should we turn around?" Paige asked. She was navigating with an actual paper map she'd bought as a joke, but it wasn't detailed enough to show the smaller roads we'd somehow gotten onto. "Let me just find a place to turn around and we'll backtrack to the highway," I said. The road was getting narrower, pavement giving way to graded dirt. Houses were spaced farther apart now, most of them abandoned or close to it. We passed one place that had burned down to just the foundation and chimney, another with all its windows boarded over. The afternoon sun was starting to slant lower, shadows stretching across the road, and I was getting genuinely anxious about being lost out here after dark. That's when we saw the trading post, or what was left of it. Old wooden building with a faded sign that said Cohen Trading Post, and below it in smaller letters, Gas Food Supplies. The gas pumps were ancient, the kind with analog numbers that flip over, but there were no hoses attached anymore. The building itself looked abandoned, windows dark, weeds growing through cracks in the concrete pad. "Is that place even open?" Paige asked. "Doesn't look like it, but maybe we can use the parking lot to turn around." I pulled in and was starting to do a 3-point turn when Paige grabbed my arm. "Wait, look." There was someone standing in the doorway of the trading post. An old man, maybe 70 or 80, wearing jeans and a denim shirt and a wide-brimmed hat. He wasn't moving, just standing there watching us. Something about his stillness made me nervous, but Paige was already unbuckling her seatbelt. "Maybe he can give us directions," she said, opening her door before I could object. I followed her reluctantly. The old man didn't move as we approached, didn't call out a greeting or ask if we needed help. Just watched us with dark eyes that seemed too bright for his age. "Excuse me," Paige said. "We're trying to get to Taos, and I think we got turned around. Can you tell us which way to the main highway?" The old man was quiet for a long moment. Then he raised one weathered hand and pointed north, up the road we just come from. 20 miles, turn left at the split, don't stop before you get there." His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in a while. "Don't stop," I repeated. "Why not?" He lowered his hand and looked directly at me. "Because they're out today, the hill people. They come down when it's getting dark. You don't want to be on the road when they do." I felt Paige tense beside me. Hill people. Been here longer than the Spanish, longer than the Pueblo tribes. They don't like visitors." He paused. "Used to keep to themselves, but last few years they've been bolder, coming down in daylight sometimes. You see them on the road, you don't stop, don't talk to them, don't look at them too long. Just drive." The rational part of my brain was screaming that this was local superstition, maybe a confused old man, definitely nothing to take seriously. But the way he said it, flat and matter-of-fact, like he was telling us to check our tire pressure, made my skin prickle. "Thank you," Paige said quietly. We'll get going now." We walked back to the car faster than we'd approached. As I was opening my door, I looked back at the trading post. The old man was gone, just empty doorway, dark interior, like he'd never been there at all. "Did you see him leave?" I asked Paige. "No, I was looking at the map." She held up the paper, but her hands were shaking slightly. "Aaron, I want to get out of here." I didn't argue, started the engine and drove north, following the old man's directions. The road climbed into rolling hills covered in piñon and juniper, and the sun was sliding lower toward the horizon, turning the sky orange and red. We hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. "There's the split," Paige said, pointing at a junction ahead where our road intersected with a slightly better maintained dirt road. I slowed down to make the turn, and that's when we saw them. 3 figures standing on the side of the road just past the intersection. They were tall, well over 6 feet, and thin, wearing what looked like old-fashioned clothing. Long coats or cloaks, I couldn't tell which. Wide-brimmed hats like the old man had worn, but these seemed somehow wrong. Too wide or too tall, or at the wrong angle, hard to focus on. They were all facing our direction, not moving, just standing in a row like they were waiting for us. "Aaron," Paige whispered, "don't stop." I wasn't planning to. But as we got closer, I could see their faces under those hats, and my foot eased off the gas without me meaning to. Their skin was the wrong color, grayish, like clay, and their eyes were too large, too dark, reflecting the late afternoon sun like animal eyes in headlights. And their mouths were slightly open, showing teeth that seemed too numerous, too small, too white. One of them raised an arm and pointed at our car. Long, jointed fingers, too many knuckles. "Drive," Paige said louder. "Aaron, drive." I hit the gas. The car lurched forward and I made the turn onto the intersecting road, tires kicking up dust. I checked the rearview mirror and saw all 3 figures turn as one to watch us pass. Synchronized, mechanical. Then they stepped off the road and disappeared into the trees, moving in that same coordinated way, like parts of a single organism. We didn't talk for the next 20 miles. Just drove in silence, both of us gripping our armrests, watching the road ahead and the mirrors for any sign of movement. The sun set completely, plunging the landscape into darkness broken only by our headlights, and I started to think we'd never find the highway, that we'd somehow driven into a loop we couldn't escape. But then we saw lights ahead. A gas station, a real one, modern and brightly lit, with cars at the pumps and people moving around inside. We pulled in and I put my head down on the steering wheel, heart hammering. "What the hell were those things?" Paige asked. Her voice was shaking. "I don't know." "The old man knew. He warned us. Maybe we should report it. Tell someone." "Tell them what?" She laughed, a brittle sound. "That we saw something weird on a back road, that some local told us a campfire story and it freaked us out. They'll think we're insane." She was right, we both knew it. We filled up the tank, bought overpriced coffee inside, and got directions to Taos from the attendant, who told us we'd been about 40 miles off course. Didn't ask how we'd ended up so far off the main road, probably thought we were stupid tourists. We made it to Taos around 11 p.m. and checked into our hotel. Paige went straight to bed, but I sat up researching. Searched for Co in a trading post and found nothing. Searched for Hill People, New Mexico, and got dozens of results about ancient petroglyphs and ancestral Puebloan sites, nothing about what we'd seen. Searched until my eyes burned and my phone battery was dying, looking for any explanation that made sense. I never found one. We cut the trip short and drove back to Albuquerque the next day, taking the main highway and not deviating once. Haven't talked about what happened since. Paige started her nursing job, moved to a different part of the city, and we drifted apart the way friends sometimes do. I wonder if she thinks about it. If she lies awake at night remembering those figures standing in a row, too tall and too still and too wrong. I think about the old man mostly, wondering if he was real or if he was something else, something warning us away. Wondering if the trading post was ever real at all. I drove that route again 6 months later, in broad daylight with friends in the car, trying to find it. Couldn't. The road split was there, but no trading post. Just empty desert and hills rolling into the distance. But I did find one thing. Pulled over at the intersection where we'd seen those figures and walked around a bit, not really sure what I was looking for. Found footprints in the dirt near where they'd been standing. 3 sets of prints, perfectly parallel to each other, spaced exactly the same distance apart. And the prints were deep, deeper than any person should make just standing still, like whatever made them was carrying enormous weight, or had been standing there for a very, very long time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments which story unsettled you most, and share this with your friends who love a good scare. Until next time, stay safe out there.